Absolutely. Now joining us on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is the voice of the Boise State Broncos, Bob Behler, returning to BYU Sports Nation. Bob, great to have you back.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the game tomorrow.
Well, it's a interesting one in that there's some injuries with quarterbacks on both sides. BYU figuring out if Jaron Hall can pass concussion protocol. Perhaps Baylor Romney, the third string, is the starter with Zach Wilson out with a thumb injury, so that's great. On the Boise State side, Hank Bachmeier suffered a hip injury. What's the latest with Bachmeier's status going into tomorrow night?
Well, there really isn't any latest because they don't really discuss injuries, nor do you get a chance to look at practice. So I think you could probably flip a coin as to whether, Hank's going to play or whether it'll be Chase. I think you'll probably see multiple quarterbacks. We've seen Chase play a little bit in every game, so I feel pretty good in saying you're probably going to see him at some point, if not at the start. So Boise State, I think, blessed that they have a couple of really good quarterbacks on their team, and what I've seen of Chase Gord, I've been pretty impressed with. So, it would be disappointing if Hank can't play, but I don't think it's the end of the world.
What is the difference in the offense, or is there none, Bob? If Hank can't go and Chase has to carry the whole thing, does the offense change that much, or do they just run the same stuff, and is Chase perfectly capable of running this thing?
Yeah, I think Chase is capable. I don't think, I think they tweak things. I think that, like in any situation, you're going to play to the strengths of whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Bachmeier, whether it's Cord, or whether it's Henderson. I think you're going to play, call plays that they feel comfortable that they've rep. But no, I don't think if you're just watching the game, sitting in, Chicago, Illinois, watching the game late at night, I don't think you're going to think that there's a whole lot of difference to Boise State. I mean, it's not like you're going from Hammond, the quarterback at Air Force, to Cole McDonald, the quarterback at Hawaii, and the types of offenses those two teams run. No, I'm sure it's similar to BYU. I'm sure that, I looked at the game last week against South Florida, and it looks to me like Hall is a lot more comfortable running with the ball than Romney was, at least when he was in there. So, I mean, to me, there are differences, and I think there are differences when running backs are in. I mean, Katoa and Asupo seem to be a little bit different too, just like some of our running backs are different. So I think that, in this late in the season with what you've done, you are who you are. And I wouldn't think there'd be a whole lot of, it's not like they're going to come out and run the option if one quarterback's in the game.
That would be quite the surprise. Bob, Boise State, number 14, 6-0. Surprise, surprise, Boise State undefeated, ranked in the top 20. It just is what it is. But what's the difference with this group versus the last couple of years, in your opinion?
I think this year the defense might be a little bit better, a little bit stronger than what they've had. And I think they've been, they basically had to win the Marshall game. It was a low-scoring game, 14-7. Getting a win against a Power 5. I mean, last year they lost to Oklahoma State. I think it was in week 3. This year they beat Florida State in week 1. So I would probably say, those two things, I mean, been good. And you guys know, I mean, I could make a case that you guys could be 0-6 this year. I could also make a case that you guys could be about 5-1 as well. So, I mean, a lot of times there's not a lot of margin for error in these games, and certainly with what we've seen in the Boise State BYU games over the past few years, I mean, how many of them come down to the last play?
Yeah, and you're right. The difference between a magical season and not is just a few plays through the course of the season.
Sure.
But they're in a great position right now. And do you feel like this Boise State's, that their group of 5 spot in a New Year's Six Bowl is theirs to lose or win here? Are they in the position where if they do what they need to do, they're the team that's going to be representing in the New Year's Six?
My answer is yes, and then I will explain it. First of all, you have to win your conference. So if you don't win your conference, it doesn't matter. There's going to be 5 teams under consideration, and that is it. So if, like last year, Boise State wins the regular season but then loses the playoff game to Fresno, they could be 12-0 in the season, lose the 1, and if you don't win the league, you're not even in the beauty contest to be decided. Boise State is ahead with what they have left. If they are to run the table, and that is a huge if, because 2 very difficult trips to Utah, this one this week, and then the next to the last week of the season, we got to go to Logan. But if they run the table, I don't see anybody else, even if they run the table, having enough to beat Boise State. That's my opinion. But if you lose a game, like if we were to lose this game tomorrow and say win everything else and go something and 1, then all of a sudden you're in it. I think if somebody else goes undefeated, they might get it. But if everybody has one loss, then I think, now you're trying to decide whose loss looks the best or the worst, depending on how you want to look at that.
How do you feel about this series since these two re-upped through 2034? They'll take a hiatus in 2024, but BYU and Boise State continue for a long time.
I like it. I mean, one of the things, it's a close game, meaning close in distance. So Boise State fans can get down there. BYU fans can get up here. I think you have a lot of, regional interest in the game. I personally would love to see this game earlier in the season, maybe like, say, a week 2 on a regular basis. I think it might have more juice a little bit because once we get into conference, it's a little different feel than if it is, up early in the season. But no matter whether it's played week 1 or week 12, I think it's a great game. The games have been close. I mean, I'm trying to think of the teams that Boise State plays in the conference, and I don't know that I can come up with more opponents that Boise State has had memorable finishes both for and against than against BYU over the last, 8-9 years. So I think it's a good rivalry. I think people enjoy it. And, in this day and age, you're trying to get people out, trying to get them to come to the stadium. You've got to offer games. If you want to sell tickets, you got to offer games that the public cares about. And I think the public does care about this one.
Absolutely. ESPN2 tomorrow night. Bob, we appreciate the insight and the time. Thanks, man.
Be looking good. Looking forward to it.
Okay, Bob
Thanks,
Behler
Bob.
on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, you know why, we show how.